How's it going, y'all? So today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite parts of photography, black and white photography. I've been doing this longer than any other thing in photography. So I started way back in the ancient times of the 1980s, back when I was in high school, and we did this for our yearbook. So we would shoot black and white film in a camera kind of similar to this one. This is my Nikon FM2. Love this camera. Loaded with black and white film right now. So we would shoot that. We would take the film back into the darkroom. We would process the film. We would put that film into an enlarger, and we would make prints using a series of chemicals. So yes, I am black and white yearbook photo old, in case you're wondering. So now we do things a little bit differently in the digital age. Even though I still shoot this because I love the look of film, sometimes it's a lot easier and a lot more convenient to start with digital. So I'll go out and shoot digital knowing that it's going to be black and white. And when I do that, I grab this beast of a camera. This is my digital camera. But when I shoot for black and white, I still shoot in color, knowing that I'm going to do all my black and white conversions in post. So with that, I even shoot my phone. The phone is great for black and white. We can use that built-in Lightroom camera. It gives you some great black and white images there as well. So now we're going to take a look at Lightroom and how we convert a color image into black and white. And I can kind of show you the process I go through when I do my work. So let's jump over there real quick. So I chose this image to kind of show you my whole process. So this is a little trip I did over to Folly Beach. This is over by the lighthouse. And it's got some great driftwood. So this is a decent shot, it's got great blue sky. The composition's cool. The driftwood looks cool, but taking this to black and white will make it even better. I shot this image knowing that it was going to be black and white. So we're going to go through the process of converting this and the different edits that I make to kind of bring out those tones that make black and white special. So I'm going to pull this off to the side so you can kind of see this conversion button here. So there's a black and white button right here at the very top corner. And what that'll do is take this image and make it a monochrome black and white image. So we're going to go ahead and hit that. And you can see the conversion there. I'll pull this back up. So now we've got only series of blacks, whites, and grays to deal with. We don't have to worry about colors or what those colors represent or what they're going to do. So now we're ready to take this and make it something spectacular. So the first thing I always do with black and white is I'll make it a little bit darker. To me, you can't get a good black and white image unless you have something in there that's absolute black. You've got to have those rich black tones to be the base of your black and white photography. So I'm going to start with my exposure slider and darken this image up. So usually I'll take it a little bit darker than I normally would on an image like this, knowing I'm going to bring some of that back. But already we got great black tones. So we're getting more contrast, we're getting more depth in the image. So there's a lot of cool things that are happening here. So we're getting texture, we're getting more contrast. And speaking of contrast, let's put a little more in here. So we'll go to the contrast slider. So oftentimes when I start with these sliders, I'll pull it to the extremes just so I know the parameters that I'm working within. So I can pull this all the way over here. Makes this image way too flat. There's nothing really black in it. There's nothing really white in it. It just kind of looks gray and a little bit blah. So I want to bump that up a little bit. So I'm going to pull this over to the right, take it kind of slow. Now I can start to see those blacks show up a little bit more. The whites are popping out some. We got great texture down here in this foreground. So I've got a great base point to get started now. So we'll talk about these other sliders. So we have highlight, shadow, whites, and blacks. So with whites, we're dealing with just those absolute white tones. So we can go in and brighten those whites up a little bit. So now we're starting to see a little bit more of these wispy clouds show up. We're getting a little bit more depth and texture in this bark. And then I go to highlights. So the difference is between these two sliders. Whites are dealing with those brightest spots only. Highlights kind of pick up where white leaves off and transitions into those lighter gray tones. So you're getting more of a result by using this slider because it's really activating more tones. So now look at it. We're brightening it up even more. So we got even more texture in that bark. So you can see where that wind and water has worn away the outer edge of that, leaving all these grooves and things that just make it fantastic. Go to shadows. So just like the whites, we're going to pick up where blacks left off and transition into those darker to mid-tone grays. So I'm going to take this black slider, I'm going to boost that just a little bit. And now I'm going to go to this shadows. We're going to pull this over. So now we're pulling that over and we're getting a little more detail in the sky. We got some of these wispy clouds showing up. So I'm going to go ahead and balance this out with some more of the whites to brighten it up a little bit. But already we're getting this texture. We're getting these rich black tones. We're getting more depth into this shot. It simply looks like it's more 3D than it did when it was in color. So we're going to kind of go from here and show you where the next edits are. So if we scroll down on our tools, we're going to see all of these colors. So we got red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, blue, purple, magenta. Why do I have color images for a black and or color sliders for black and white images? So this image is still a color image. So what we've done is put like a black and white filter on top of it. So we can go in and adjust the individual colors and put black and white tones to them. So we're going to go through that. So we're going to start with the sky. So I want to make that sky a little more dramatic. I know we had great blues in there, so I'm going to go to the blue slider and I'm going to pull that over to darken the sky. So check that out. You know, it's looking even better. So you can take that all the way to black, you know, it doesn't look that great, but you know, just so you know what it does. So I'm going to pull that back over. So there's where we started, darken that down just a bit. So look at the way the limb here just sort of separates itself now. We've got the highlights from the sun on all those little sticks, and putting it on a darker background increases that depth feel even more. So let's take a look at some of the other sliders we've got. So I know there's some yellows in the sand and in the bark here. So I want to go to this yellow and see what it does. So this is kind of pulling it to the dark. You know, that kind of takes the contrast away. We don't want to go that way. So let's pull it over and lighten it a little bit. All right, now so we can start to see those grooves get even deeper in that tree. So we're taking that and lightening up some of those tones. The sand is brightening up some. So you can kind of see what we're doing there. So we're adding that contrast, we're adding that texture and a little bit more depth by taking those yellows and assigning a different value of gray to them. So let's jump down to aqua. So, you know, we kind of got some blue-green things happening. So let's slide this around, see what we have. Okay, so the aqua is showing up down in those clouds that are on the horizon. So let's take those and lighten them up a little bit more. So pulling way over there, it might be a little much. So let's brighten those up. So now we got those horizon clouds there. So we got a contrast that's happening in the background there. And I know there's some purple in this too. You really wouldn't think that there's purples, but blue kind of holds a little bit of that purple shade in there. So let's take a look at this too. Sliding this over. So yeah, we got a lot of purple showing up in there. So where do we stop with this? So I want to take this over and darken that just a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is start playing back and forth and visually make some adjustments with these blues and purples. Maybe pull that blue back a little bit, add a little bit of purple in there, and just see what we can get. So we got these transitional wispy clouds that are starting to show up now. So that's pretty cool. And then I'll just go through and check the other sliders. Orange, I'm guessing we'll get a little bit in there because of the yellows and oranges being so related. We'll probably get something in the bark. We'll get a little bit in the sand. So let's see what we show up there. Yep, so we got some stuff showing up there. Kind of sliding this back and forth. So I'm going to darken it just a little bit to get some more of those rich black tones in there. So you can kind of see it up there in the upper part of the tree where I'm starting to get a little more texture in there. Reds, I don't think we're going to have much in red. Nope, not much happening on that red channel. Zero that back out. We'll take a look at the greens. Okay, well, we did have a little bit of green. I wasn't really expecting that. So we kind of see the green showing up here in this little stand of trees. So maybe we want to open that up some, and so we can see those individual limbs a little bit better. Take advantage of that green. All right, so we got something that's working for us pretty well now. So we've got all of these color adjustments that we've made to make this better. So we've got the sky being a little more dramatic. We got these light colors down here that we picked up with the aqua. We've got the purple that we use to get that sky a little bit darker. We've got better separation here with this limb. We're getting a little more depth. The greens opened up in here. So we've made quite a few adjustments to this already. So we're going to slide down a little bit more. Let's talk about the effects. So there's a couple things in here I'll definitely use. I'm going to start with dehaze. And I do this with almost all of my beach stuff that I do, because if you're out there and there's any kind of wind, which most days we have wind on the beach, some sand particles will get up in the air and it kind of makes things look hazy. So we can use that dehaze to make things a bit more crisp. So let's take a look what dehaze does for us right now. So we can pull this around, see where we're going to go with it. So I'm not going to make a big adjustment with the dehaze, but a little bit. So let's pull this over here and we'll kind of get the best result in that sky. Kind of making it go just a little bit darker. We're getting a little more separation in this area here. So we got some cool stuff happening. Clarity. So what the clarity is going to do is play with the contrast just a little bit more to make it look a little sharper, give it a little more snap. I think we'll see that most here in the texture in the foreground of this tree. So let's run the clarity up a little bit. Yep, so we're getting some more detail in here that's showing up. We got some more textures that are coming in. And we'll take that back just a little bit. We don't want to overdo it. So we got a lot more contrast. We got a lot more depth. We're getting some great things happening with this. Vignette, I don't use a lot. We can just take a look at what it does. You know, we kind of darken the corners. Sometimes that helps to kind of isolate the subject in the center a little bit more. But you can lighten it the other way. I never do this. I just don't like that look at all. But I may put a little bit of vignette in that, just kind of help the sky out just a touch more. So just a few points of that in there. And then the last one we have is green. So let's talk about that again, my film camera that I really love. So what a lot of photographers will do is they'll want to simulate that grain look from film in their digital work. So you can just dial in this. And it's going to put that texture of the film grain in your image. Kind of tough to see now. If you zoom in, you'll see it a little bit more. So that's kind of a cool effect that you can use to kind of just, pay homage to that old film days, those old film days. So now, lastly, we're going to take a look at the details down here. So we're not going to use noise reduction because we don't have any color noise or the noise reduction here. I really don't have noise showing up in this because it's a pretty high resolution image to start with. The one thing I will play with a little bit is sharpening. So most often when I'm using sharpening is for printing. When I send something to an inkjet printer, obviously the resolution on an inkjet printer is much lower than the resolution on your screen. We don't have 4K inkjet printers just yet. So when I go to print something, I'll sharpen it a little bit so I can kind of hold some of that detail that I'm getting on screen to make that image look really good. So I'm going to slide this over to sharpen it just a little bit so you can see even more of that texture showing up. So this is kind of my process when I start with an image and start to go through it, but this isn't the end of it. So let's take a look at the difference I made. So I can go over here and we can go to show original. So here's the color image. Okay, so, like I said, it's a decent image. It's got some good composition, but it just doesn't have that drama. It doesn't have the depth that we had by taking this to black and white. So I'm gonna take this right back. Much more dramatic. Great thing. I mean, it actually almost looks three-dimensional when you get this in the black and white. So when it comes to digital work, I started in Photoshop. Lightroom didn't exist back when I first started doing digital, version 1 of Photoshop. So I still use Photoshop probably more than Lightroom. Lightroom, I use it to rough in and use it for its cataloging purposes. Now, when I want to really refine an image, I'll go to Photoshop. And I can do that here right from Lightroom. What's one of the great things about the Adobe softwares is they speak really well with one another, and you can transition between the Adobe programs really well in order to get that exact result that you're looking for. So all I have to do is go here and go to edit in Photoshop, and it'll automatically open Photoshop and put the image right in there. So while it's doing that, I'm going to stop sharing here so we can jump over to Photoshop real quick. So once it gets to Photoshop, we'll open that up again and take a look. So let me share that screen real quick. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. So you can see all my edits stayed intact. Everything is looking good, but there's a few things about this that I want to change. So I've got a lot more tools where I can do a lot more precise editing with Photoshop than I could with Lightroom. So I kind of use these two hand in hand. So the first thing I want to go in and do that really bothers me is this log down here in the corner. I think it's really distracting. I don't like it. I don't like highlights being on the edge. I think it kind of takes away from the rest of the image. So I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm going to start by just zooming in on this area. and coming in where I just kind of see that log right there. So what I'm going to do now is use the clone stamp and the spot healing brush to go in and make these adjustments. So I got the clone stamp right here, and I can come over in my image and I can choose the area that I want to clone over. So what this is doing is going to make an exact duplicate of what I select. So I'm going to hold down my Option key on a Mac. It'll be an Alt key on a PC. And I'll click once and release. And that chose that area here. So now I can come over to this area and start painting away. So you'll see the X that shows up on the sand area, and that shows me the exact area that's being cloned over to cover this tree. So bringing that sand over to cover up that tree. The downside on using the clone stamp is you're making an exact duplicate. So you might start to see this repeating pattern. You can sort of see this shadow area here showing up exactly there. So we're going to have to go back in and work on that a little bit more after we get rid of the tree. So I'm going to go to the top and work down. So I got this nice shadow here that I can work with. So holding down that Option or Alt key again, I'm going to choose this area right on the edge of where the shadow kind of meets the other area. So click once there, and I can come up here and I can line up where I want that line to start. So line that up right on the edge so that shadow looks like it's going to be straight across, and then come over here and get rid of this. So I'll click multiple times while I'm doing this. I don't do everything with like one click. So I make short strokes with this and then click the mouse again. So if you try to do this too much, too quickly, you're going to get those patterns. They'll be even harder to get rid of. So I'm going to go over here and choose some of this area now, bring this over here and finish getting rid of that. Okay, so this did the majority of my work for me. So I've gotten rid of that piece of wood in the corner that I really didn't like, but you can definitely see the pattern showing up in here. We've got these white lines that are coming through that's showing up as a repeated pattern, which is automatically going to draw your attention to it. So what I'm going to do to mask that is go up to this tool. It's a spot healing brush. So the spot healing brush works in a couple of different ways. So it samples all the pixels that are around the area that you choose and then replaces them with something that's similar. So there's a couple of ways we can do it up here. It's got proximity match. You can kind of see it's a little bit covered there. Texture and content aware. By default, it usually goes to content aware. With this being sand, I want to try texture. So create texture on this. And then I'm going to go in and just click on some of this and break up that pattern. Nah, I don't think I like that. So I'm going to go back in my history where I got all the spot healing, go back to my clone. It's a great thing about this history. If you make a mistake, you just go back and you can start all over again. So now I'm going to go back to content aware. Let's see what content aware. Yeah, I like that a lot better. I think the texture was putting way too much texture in there. So now I can use this content aware button to come in and just disguise some of those patterns, just so I'm not getting something that's repeating really obviously. So there, I got covered most of that up. So let's zoom back out and take a look at that. So if I double click on the hand icon here, it's going to take it back to full screen. So now I've gotten rid of that log there that's kind of distracting. So let's take a look what that looks like from the beginning and show you the changes that I made. So I'm going to pull this off to the side. Here's my history button again. I can open up that history, and this shows me everything that I've done to this image in Photoshop. So I can click on this top image here, and I'm right back to where I started. So that shows that limb in there. I can scroll back down to the bottom, and that's where I am now. I like that a lot better. Okay, so now all I have to do is come over to Photoshop and go to File and Save. So what this is going to do is it'll save this Photoshop document and put it back into Lightroom with these edits intact. This is the way that Adobe softwares really work well with one another. So I can go ahead and drop off of this, and we'll stop sharing. And we'll go back over to Lightroom. Okay, so you can see that my image is back up here. That transition hasn't quite come over yet. It's still saving over. Sometimes it takes a minute to get that moving over, especially with big files like I'm working with here. So what we can do is go ahead and go and make a couple more edits. So let's just go back up. Once I kind of get it roughed in the way I want, I'll go back to my exposure and take a look at that again. Sometimes when I make these edits, I'll go a little darker than what I really want. So I'll come in and make some really subtle changes in here just to kind of see where I want that to go. So maybe something like that. We'll go my shadows a little bit. Bring that sky down just a touch. I want to go to my highlights. Bring those out a little bit. Kind of play with the highlights and shadows right now, because I want that dramatic dark sky, but I want that transition in this area to show up really well too. So this is kind of it. You know, it's as soon as the Photoshop catches up, that limb will drop out, and that will be it. That will be my final image. So this is kind of, you know, where I go when I start with color and end with black and white. So we've gone from here showing our original. So we've got the colors, we've got all of this going on, but nothing really spectacular. I can go back over here, get rid of that, put my edits back on, and there you have it. So this is black and white photography in the digital world. So let's talk about your assignment just a bit. So with your assignment, I want you to go out and shoot 30 images with the mindset that I'm going to make these black and white. So look for textures, look for things that maybe look nostalgic, or black and white can make it look even more nostalgic. So get at least 30 shots and create your album in Lightroom and get all of those in there. So then I want you to go in and do your edits and just get those looking the way you want them, and choose 10. Let's choose 10 and get those into a PowerPoint. And I want you to put the original color image up with the black and white edit next to it. And when you go to your comments to comment on your classmates' work, talk about, you know, which one you like better. Why do you like it better? Do you think it read better as black and white, or do you think it should have stayed as original color? Some of the things that we can talk about there to get that discussion going. So that's it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what y'all come up with. I keep looking away because my notes are over here. So let's get this going and see where you guys take this black and white. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon.